welcome everyone to the long-term flood recovery connections call. We are so pleased to have all of you. My name is Emily Schaefer and I'm the Director of Development here at the Midland Area Community Foundation, and it's an honor to be a part of this conversation and to learn so much. We've had a variety of different calls, and each one I'm just amazed at how much I gather. So thanks for making the time and being here. We are excited to talk more about some of the specific things that are happening in regards to long-term flood recovery, and Alicia will get into that. But before we do, just a couple of logistical items. We are going to have time for questions and answers at the end, so you're more than welcome to unmute yourself and actually ask the questions yourself. Or if you have the question and you just want to type it in the chat, you're more than welcome to do that too, and we will ask the presenters or anyone on the call that maybe can help answer the question. We will ask, and you can also send it to me privately too if you'd want to do that, and I can ask on your behalf anonymously as well. As a reminder, this call is recorded, which is really sweet, because if you wanted to go back or if you wanted to share this with any friends, family, or colleagues, we encourage you to do that. They are found on the Midland Foundation site, so midlandfoundation.org. And you can also find the links on the reliefmidland.org site as well. And Alicia will tell you a little bit more about some of the previous calls that we've had, but just reminder that those are out there, and you can also view this recording at that time too. And then if somebody does become unmuted, and I can mute folks, but it looks like everybody's muted for the most part. So, but we'll just ask you to mute your microphones unless you do have a question. So without further ado, I would like to just introduce my friend and colleague, Alicia Christie. Alicia is really integrally involved in the flood recovery work, and we're so happy to have her. Her role is the Director of Community Impact here, so she really works hand in hand with so many folks that are doing the work for long-term flood recovery. So I'll let her kick us off.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Emily. And not to put anybody on the spot, but feel welcomed to turn your videos on. I know for me, I tend to have a difficult time talking to a screen without at least some sort of human interaction or nonverbals going back and forth. So feel welcomed, don't feel forced. But as Emily said, my name is Alicia, and I work with the Midland Area Community Foundation, and I do have the honor of just being able to experience long-term flood recovery in different ways and facets. And it's an ever-evolving process, but one that I am lucky and thankful to be a part of. And so just to kind of center everybody on why we're even on this call, because as I look across the screen, I see many of you who I know and who I've connected with, but maybe not through the use of this Flood Connections call. And ultimately, our development and marketing team here at the Community Foundation, and in partnership with the Long-Term Recovery Group, really started asking a few months ago, what is a way that we can make sure our community is kept up to date on the high level processes and evolvement of long-term flood recovery in our community? We know that we anticipate a 1 to 2 year long-term recovery process from the dam failures back in May. And so it makes sense that we look for little ways in which to continue to try and infuse the general information and updates into the community. So that is one way that we're doing that, is through these community connection calls. And so historically, we started these in August, and up until this point, a lot of the focus has been on more of the infrastructure of what long-term recovery looks like for various communities and the various infrastructure needs that have been identified. So up to this point, we have had information around zoning ordinances and information. We've had the updates on small business impact. We've had the impact of mental health discussed. We've had presenters from FEMA and SBA to discuss the logistics of that process when it was still really in the throes of FEMA application time, which I'm sure you'll hear more about. And we've also had, to kick things off, just the overall infrastructure information about how long-term recovery works in our community. But Kevin, if you could just throw on the screen a quick graphic that we do share a lot. We want people to see that long-term recovery is not individualized to a certain entity, to a certain organization. It really is a community collaborative and a community effort. And long-term recovery groups are actually founded on best practice and research. So our long-term recovery group is comprised of a steering committee of 5 people. And within that steering committee, a lot of high-level discussions are had and then disseminated and discussed amongst the 6 subcommittees. And so the 6 subcommittees of this infrastructure is our case management, our financial support, volunteer coordination, housing support, rebuild and construction, and public relations, are our communications. And so I think today, the purpose of bringing everybody together is really to focus on 2 components of this, our case management piece and our volunteer piece, because we know that both of those are very fast paced and ever evolving and changing. And so we want to be able to give some snapshot in time information to all of you about what that looks like. So you can close that out, Kevin. I just wanted people to see that quick graphic. So today our official topic is the discussion around disaster case management and volunteer coordination in our community. And when Reagan and Bree were chatting, I think that their hope is that this can be more of a dialogue and a discussion. And yes, they have information to share, but we definitely want to encourage everybody on this call to feel, again, welcomed, to ask questions, to share feedback, because we know that without that continued feedback loop, we're not able to really continue moving forward in our long-term recovery. So with that, we want people to be able to walk away with a broader awareness of the coordinated direct service offerings within our community after this call. We want people to have a knowledge of how to engage in volunteerism or seek case management for themselves or others. And we also just want people to have this high-level overview of the themes and trends of long-term recovery efforts that are happening in the field right now. So with that, I know that Reagan and Bree, as our 2 presenters, are going to go back and forth a little bit. My understanding is Reagan's going to start and then pass it over to Bree. But I just wanted to provide 2 brief introductions on each of them, but I'm sure I'm going to botch this. So if you have anything to add, please feel free to share. But Reagan Schultz, she is one of our 4 Midland County disaster case managers here in our community. And as a recent graduate of Saginaw Valley State University, I am, I guess, proud or happy to say that this is her first official role. And I think that that's just super critical and awesome to have the unique insights and awareness of kind of how to think outside the box and continue to really push the envelope on this flood recovery. She was really engaged in her work and her time at Saginaw Valley in many things, ranging from alternatives breaks to residence assistance work for several years. One thing that I love to share with people is that she was also an intern with the Community Foundation earlier this year, and she interned within the community impact arm of the foundation. And then Bree comes to us from United Way of Midland County. Bree's official role is the disaster volunteer manager with United Way. And so she's really focusing on making sure that volunteer efforts and in-kind donations are organized and allocated in the most impactful way as it relates to the 2020 dam failures. I think that it's important to note she comes to the community both as a business analyst bank officer with TCF Bank and as a military veteran. And so I just think it's neat that both of those skills are able to be used in the immediate emergency relief response to ensure that our community is continuing to look at structure and safety in times that are ever changing and evolving. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to both of you and just ask that you take it away.
Okay, hello, I am Reagan Schultz, and I apologize, there might be noise for just a moment. My sister just walked in, so as she makes her way, yeah, thank you for that introduction, Alicia. I would like to, she mentioned that we have 4 case managers on our team. I was asked today to kind of describe the direct ongoing work from case management. So that's my plan. In our team, we have a team of 4 case managers working across Midland County. We have 2 stationed in Sanford and 2 stationed in the city of Midland. You'll find them either at the Jerome Township Hall or at the United Way of Midland here in the city. And although we're stationed in those places, we work across the county equally. So we also work in close collaboration with a construction manager. His name is Brian Barrett, and he's able to support us as we're on the ground out looking at homes and assessing the needs of our clients. And we're also supported by Bree as our volunteer manager here through United Way. And our team's purpose is really just to empower flood survivors in their recovery efforts. And then we provide them with referrals and resources when that's possible. So a lot of what we've been doing over the last couple months of our recovery efforts are helping people through that FEMA and SBA process. We've been supporting them through their applications. The application deadline was September 30th, so we did a lot of work with helping people get registered. And now we are supporting people with their FEMA appeals. So people are eligible to receive up to $35,500 towards restoring their home, and then an additional $35,500 towards restoring personal property that they may have lost. And so we are working to help people get towards closer towards that maximum amount that they can receive from FEMA. And then we're also serving as advocates for these flood survivors that are having difficulties with FEMA and SBA. And we have liaisons at FEMA and SBA that we can talk to and try and get down to the bottom of maybe why there are complications, or get a better understanding about why decisions were made the way they were for our flood survivors. We have so far been able to support flood survivors in receiving hundreds and thousands of additional grant dollars through the FEMA appeals process. And another way that we can identify funding for flood survivors is through preparing financial asks to local funders in our community. So our long-term disaster recovery group has a financial wing that we just saw in that image. And so if people have expressed needs and we've been able to verify their needs and they need those financial resources, we as case managers can take you on as a client and prepare a financial ask and advocate on your behalf to receive funding. So part of our work is trying to identify those grant dollars and funding sources for flood survivors. We are also able to be a referral or identify or refer you out to whatever needs you may have. One thing I kind of want to make clear is that we as case managers can support a spectrum of needs. We're not just here to help restore your property. We know that this flooding it's upended people's lives in a matter of a couple days. And there aren't just property losses that come from a disaster, especially a disaster of this magnitude. So there are other non-funding related needs we can refer you to. And 211, United Way, the Community Foundation, our emergency manager, they refer flood survivors to us to answer questions and help them with this spectrum of needs that you may have. And so we can do things like refer you to mental health services, spiritual and pastoral care, realtors, temporary housing, financial and credit counseling, contractors. So we also can just offer you anything from encouragement and a listening ear to information that you might need about a lot of these processes that you just may not realize. And we also have technology to support you. So a lot of people have needed help faxing things, and they don't have a fax. Who has a fax machine at their home anymore? Or completing those applications, and they maybe don't have a computer to do that, or the Wi-Fi. And so I'm going to drop our phone number in the line, because we really are a great resource to call if you have any ideas or need support, or any needs, or need support in any way. So I just added that in the chat. Some trends that we're seeing right now with the flood survivors that we're working with. We're seeing a lot of people that need contractors, either to give bids or to complete their work. So we're trying to connect people with the contractors that we're seeing that are effective in the community right now, and that are offering the most realistic rates. And then we're also seeing people with a need for financial resources. We are seeing people with this need for advocacy to FEMA and SBA. And then we're also seeing a need for people who have to furnish their homes. And so that's something that we're working with individuals to try and get those furnishings for them, but we're also trying to develop systems so that we can have those furnishings available as people present those needs, because ultimately a lot of people maybe aren't even ready for those things right now. So some trends in the current clients that we have a lot of seniors who that has created a lot of barriers to them being able to recover effectively on their own. We have clients who are single parents, people with cognitive impairments, and then people who are displaced from their homes right now. That's the trends that we're seeing for people in our client base. But I, again, just want to make it clear that through case management, we can take you on as a client and do detailed assessments and verify your needs, if that's the support you are seeking. But we can answer your phone call and identify your needs on the phone and send you an email with our referrals, and that might be the extent of our relationship. So there is a very wide spectrum of ways that we can support you through case management, but that phone number, it's a go-to if you have any flood related needs. So one example I just wanted to share, because this is a need you may not realize that flood survivors, or that you may have, that we might be able to support. I have a couple clients who have pre-existing mortgages on homes, and now they are needing to take out SBA loans to repair their homes or build new homes. And so they've got two large sums of debt that, if you add them together, are more than the value of the homes that they will be living in. And so one thing that we've been able to do is supply grant funding through local community dollars to reduce the amount of debt that our flood survivors will take, so that if you're going to sell your home in the future, you don't have additional debt beyond what your home is worth. So not that we're expecting our flood survivors to sell their homes, but we just don't want people to be house poor. And so that's something that we may be able to support you with as a flood survivor. And another example of a client that we've been able to support so far. I took on this client back in August, and we started just by completing the FEMA application, because they didn't have the technology to be able to complete that on a computer. A lot of people have tried to complete these applications on the phone, and that has led to complications. So getting them on a computer was great. And then they were initially denied for FEMA, but we were able to appeal FEMA in the last month. We found out that this client was able to receive some FEMA funds, and now they have a need to finish up their home. They've been able to use some of the FEMA funds towards doing some contracted work, and they're left with needing to paint and install flooring in their home. And so with what financial resources they have left, they can't afford to contract that work out. So we're able to, they were able to purchase the supplies, and with the volunteer base that we have, we're gonna be able to get that work done in their home. So we're able to stretch the resources they were able to use through FEMA in collaboration with Bree. So that's exciting, and we're moving forward on that project relatively soon. So we may have volunteers for you as well. So Bree's going to talk a little bit more about that. When we're not engaging directly with clients, we're working within the long-term recovery group to try and identify systems that could support a variety of people, whether they're talking with us as case managers or not. So, for example, the appliance sale that happened recently, that was spearheaded by United Way and Whirlpool and a collaboration effort. And we, as the case managers, were kind of the front lines of that, getting vouchers out to flood survivors so that they were getting additional discounts. We got hundreds of calls over the week or so leading up to that appliance sale. So connecting people to those types of resources are things that we are working to support as well. We're also hoping to, I mentioned getting systems to support furnishings for flood survivors. Right now we're developing a program where we can get home in a box kits to flood survivors, so that would have a lot of those final interior needs that you might have in a home, from beds to the things you put in your kitchen to curtains. And so those are all types of projects that we're hoping to just keep establishing, so that whether you're in need of some more intensive case management or not, there are still resources for you as a flood survivor in our community. So that's a little bit about what we're doing on the ground right now. And so I guess I'll field it to Bree to share what she's doing in volunteer management.
Thanks, Reagan. Good morning, everyone. I am so humbled and excited to speak with you all today about volunteerism and what that looks like in partnership with the disaster case managers. And how does that fit into the long-term recovery group? I do want to take a minute to express how pleased I am with Reagan's opening statements. I think it really helps paint the picture to what the core piece is to long-term recovery. Volunteerism is just a component, a tool that will assist with reaching those long-term recovery goals. And the ultimate goal is to make it as easy as we can for the homeowners, because we know that it's not easy. And that partnership with case management will allow us to do that. And so when we think of volunteerism and what it really is, it's really just offering something without expecting anything in return. And I have to express that this community did not skip a beat when it came to needing to grow that literally overnight. The volunteerism that stepped up, both structured and unstructured, was just breathtaking. It was moving, and it's exciting to continue to be a part of that and to continue to engage that in a way that supports what the long-term recovery group is doing. And so what does that kind of look like from a United Way hat? Well, that's really simple. We're acting and sharing a common desire to raise our community up in a way that is meaningful, that's impactful, that's coordinated, and that's safe. And we do that as a team. We are here to support the disaster case managers in reaching the community in all of those facets. Some examples of volunteer efforts that were incredibly successful in doing those types of things was the coordination of in-kind donations to plan for current and future needs of the community. Establishing those distribution centers that provided impacted community members with their most immediate needs. Those were coordinated as an emergency response through volunteerism, just to help be present and make sure that people were safe and getting what they needed. Now that we have the long-term recovery group established, and we're leaning more on the disaster case managers and how volunteerism can support them in their goals. We've done a call center that was ran by volunteers to help with some of those outgoing calls from the initial screening and intake process. So the case management team members had a little bit of space to work inside that made them be more effective and efficient in their goals. We have regular opportunities for home visit assistance. So they walk alongside of the disaster case managers to help make sure that they are focused and that they are safe and able to make the biggest impact possible when trying to reach out to the community. We've also partnered with the disaster case managers in making sure that FEMA deadline was widely communicated. That was such an important deadline that everybody needed to know, and we recognized that that information was getting out there with digital solutions, but not everybody has access to those types of media platforms. So we made the decision to launch volunteers to hand deliver information kits door to door just to impacted communities, with the expression of, if you don't need it, find a neighbor that does. And it explained what the long-term recovery group is. It explained some resources that were available to the homeowners, and it put a strong emphasis on that FEMA deadline to make sure that homeowners were getting availability to all of the resources that they deserve. And these are just examples of volunteerism in action. And I wanted to open with that because I wanted to kind of take a look at what's moving forward in terms of volunteerism. It's really easy to think of volunteerism in terms of the scope of the flood just as the rebuild of a home. But I think it's really important that we recognize that there are so many more needs than just the home rebuild piece. Providing food, emotional and moral support, getting quality information out to the community, advocacy, coordination, volunteers that can drive in a variety of capacities, you name it. There are so many skills that are involved with the recovery, and every volunteer helps that community work towards our common goal. And that's where our partnership with the DCMs is critical to ensure that we're meeting all of those direct community needs. And we keep a united partnership and making the community our #1 priority. United Way has a strong partnership with the DCMs in the long-term recovery group. And as those DCMs evaluate the needs of the community, they will be identifying opportunities for volunteer use. Our goal is to assist the homeowners with those needs, whatever that looks like to them. And so there's going to be a need for a variety of volunteer types with a variety of skill sets. And we will continue to evolve that, however the needs are identified through the DCMs, because they are really going to be the most knowledgeable on what the need is, because they're seeing it from the front lines, but then they're also deeply connected with all of those resources that are available. So they'll know the most effective way that we can accomplish that common goal. And so I know that transitions into the question of, well, how do I get involved? You know, I love to volunteer, or I have groups, or I have individuals that this sounds right up their alley, or they're looking to volunteer. They're just not sure how to be a part of this growing community. That's pretty simple. You can check the United Way portal, and there's always going to be updated volunteer opportunities. You can also reach out to me directly, and I'll make sure that I put my email in the chat box. What would happen, what that looks like if you were to reach out to me directly, if you want to be involved in volunteerism, is that provides me the opportunity to have a conversation with you. I can learn what motivates you or your group, what you're passionate about, and how you would like to help, and what special skills you might be able to bring to the table. And that will allow us to immediately partner you with a volunteer opportunity that meets all of those or some of those things that we discuss and we identify. Then you want to kind of take a look at it from a community member aspect and think there's going to be the question of, how do I ask for help, right? How can I get some volunteer support? First, it's important to know that it's okay to ask for help. Whatever that looks like to the homeowner or you personally. We're blessed to have a community that shows up when things get tough. So the long-term recovery group is designed to coordinate those pieces so that the homeowner can focus on what's most important, and that's their health and safety. If you know anybody that's struggling and you feel like they could benefit from volunteerism, they could just reach out to either myself or one of the DCMs. We'd be happy to coordinate all of those nuanced pieces for them, just so that they can focus on their recovery. We recognize that events happen in life that are beyond our control, and we would just like to make that as painless as possible when things are getting tough. And volunteerism is really going to be a great tool in our back pocket to be able to do that in a cost-effective and meaningful way, connecting community members. So that's all that I have in terms of volunteerism. I would love to either turn it back to Reagan if she would like to add anything additional to that, or even up to the group if they have questions for Reagan or myself.
I've got nothing to add. Thank you.
Bree and Reagan, thank you very much just for providing just the, again, quick synopsis of what is going on right now, kind of what can people walk away understanding about that direct service capacity. And I don't do very well with awkward long pauses on Zoom, but I'm getting better. So we do want to just open it up. There are no right or wrong questions. There are no right or wrong topics. And ask, do people have questions? Because we want to use this time as most effective to all of the people that are choosing to take this time and be here today. So I'm going to stop talking for a sec. And Ron, thank you so much, because I see that you are unmuted, sir.
Yeah, I guess my question for Reagan is, it's great that you guys are out there running interference for people dealing with FEMA and SBA. I guess the question is it almost a situation where somebody needs somebody every time when they deal with FEMA and SBA, or is that overall gone pretty well and it's just a few exceptions that people have problems with those agencies?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Ron. Ultimately, the purpose of our organization is to be here to fill in the gaps for those who maybe are more vulnerable to the effects of this flooding. So no, our hope is that you are fully capable as a flood survivor of recovering on your own, not needing to call us, having all the information at your disposal in order to recover. That's why leading your recovery and empowerment of flood survivors is our main driving purpose. So we are here when I have a client whose home was totally destroyed and they received $7,000 for FEMA, and that didn't feel right to them. So now that's an example of a time where we would step in and contact FEMA on their behalf and say, hey, what's going on? This isn't right. Let's re-review all the documents that you have on behalf of this client. And so because we have that training on FEMA and what they can award people for, and they understand that we're pursuing them with reason. It's not somebody just calling because they didn't receive enough for FEMA, for example. So really, no, we're not. A lot of people we have had across the 5 counties, over 4,000 people I know have applied for FEMA and SBA. We don't have the manpower within our recovery efforts to work hand in hand with each one of those individuals. It's typically the people who are just having more troubles with those systems that we're supporting.
Yeah, and if I can bounce off of what Ron just said, and honestly, what Reagan, your response was, this work is super messy and super imperfect a lot. And I think that you just mentioned it. There were over 4,000 people that applied for FEMA support. There is no way to think, even in the best of cases, that our disaster case management team can scratch the surface of that. And I just want to make sure that there's honor and recognition, given that there are so many groups within our community that are serving humans and supporting those that do, need support in some capacity. But I think, Reagan, if you could just speak a little bit to that vulnerabilities word that you shared, that really maybe just sharing what the case management role is in identifying those vulnerabilities, and what are vulnerabilities? What does that even mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is all based on the best practices of disaster recovery work. But there are a list of risk factors that may make someone much more vulnerable to not being able to recover from a flooding event and live in a home in a safe and sanitary home. So some of those risk factors include people who are elderly, people who are single parents, households with children, people who are displaced from their homes, people with disabilities. So there's a long list of potential risk factors. And if we have more than just one phone call conversation with somebody who just has a referral need, we start to screen them and assess for those risk factors. And we'll ask if they satisfy those risk factors, we'll go down the list. And so if people meet a handful of those risk factors, we ask them if they're interested in case management, because we know that it may be support that would really benefit them. Does that help?
Thank you. Are there any other questions that people have, just that they want to, again, hop off mute and share it, ask it?
I'll ask one, just thinking about, if I have a friend or a family member that is working through recovery and repairing their home, but they have kind of a need here and there, and they call case management. What does that look like? And can you kind of walk me through the process of what calling case management looks like, and where to go from there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to be fully transparent. When you call that number that I dropped in the chat, you will reach a voicemail. So I just want you all, community members and flood survivors, to know that since we have 4 case managers who are all managing a caseload, we look at those voicemails every day and say, who has the capacity to respond to these calls. So that allows for us to be most attentive to flood survivors. So yeah, you call that number, you'll reach a voicemail, you'll leave your name, your address, and your phone number. And then you will get a call back from us within 48 hours. It's typically sooner than that. It's typically same day or next day, but you'll get a call back within 48 hours. And we'll typically start by saying, hey, I'm a case manager returning your call, and I'm just wondering where you're at in your recovery and what you perceive your needs to be at this time. And so based on what you say, there's a variety of things that could happen from there. If you are looking for temporary housing, we would refer you to home to stay. If you are explaining that you're running short on resources, we'd say, okay, well, would you consider becoming a client? We can do an assessment of your needs, what resources you do and don't have, and see if we can go request the funds to meet the remainder of your needs. We typically will try to identify whether you're calling about a primary and essential living space or a non-essential living space. We do get a lot of calls from people who are looking to restore their previously finished basements or things like that. And we're honest and say there's a limited amount of things that we can do for you in that situation, but we can still help you appeal through FEMA. We can help you to, these are places that have donations for things that you may be needing in your basement. So, you know, there are any number of paths you can take from when we take that initial call, but it really just starts with what are your recovery needs at this point? We really want flood survivors to be leading their recovery efforts and articulating to us what they need.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm gonna just kind of ask or maybe share a piece of information, and then Reagan, sorry, again, bounce it to you. But I think both of you hit on it in the information that you just shared a bit ago, that if somebody has a financial need that is unmet, yes, there are community funds available through what long-term recovery is. And I think a lot of times, historically, that's sometimes what we think of when we think about unmet needs, are those financial unmet needs. And so I do want to make sure to give honor to the fact that there is a lot of amazing ability to steward funds because of our community, because there have been thousands and thousands of people locally and globally that have chosen to support people in their recovery through providing generous donations to be able to meet these needs in which Reagan is talking about. But I think there's that other part, and I think both of you mentioned it, is recovery is not solely that financial piece. It is so significantly weighted on social emotional needs as well. And that's a conversation that we've been having a lot, is that people who are in chronic stress and have experienced total loss and devastation and trauma do not have the same functioning capacity that they would if they were in a non-traumatized experience. So I'm just curious, could you speak to maybe that volunteer and case management effort that is being had to really support that social emotional lensing?
Sure. Yeah. So one process that system or program we've been able to develop over the last couple of months is through our collaboration with the Pastors Coalition here in Midland County. And they have a lot of representation on a variety of different committees within our long-term recovery group. And as we case managers started to express that social and emotional support needs that some of our clients who have experienced this disaster are having, they stepped up to the plate and were interested in offering volunteers. They are Stevens ministers through different parishes that have been trained to support people with their social and emotional needs. It's providing emotional and spiritual care. And so they are actively training more of those individuals, and we're calling them care partners. So if one of the flood survivors we're aware of may be in need of a care partner, we are pairing them with care partners and connecting them so they have somebody maybe that they can call more frequently, because as case managers and people in this all the people in this long-term recovery group have a lot of work on our hands. So if it's purely social emotional needs that need to be met at this time, we're referring them to these care partners to have those more regular, more frequent conversations. Bree, do you have anything you want to add to that partnership?
Yeah, I just want to put a little bit of emphasis on the fact that they are not therapists, they are not official counselors. They're really community members that care, and they want to make sure that the community is being attended to from a friendship base, but also recognize that there is training involved in that. And that training, though, is very important and prepares them for the type of situations that they're getting into. It's by no means going to be a replacement of mental health needs. And I believe they're being trained in recognizing when the needs go beyond their services and making sure that those that next level partnership is attained.
Absolutely. And community mental health is our friend. They have been offering free sessions for counseling and therapy to not only just flood survivors. That actually was initiated as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic that we're experiencing. So that has just served our clients well when they've had those more intensive needs. And I guess I'll just add that another reason that this program was developed was because, you know, most people who are invested in a church community have been able to be very supported during this time. And even though people might have experienced financial and property losses, having those supporters and that community to stand beside you makes this process so much better, so much more bearable. So the people that we're referring to, these care partners, are typically people who don't have that church community and kind of feel lost and alone at this point, just because they don't feel that community support. So I think that's a very important point that you raised, Bree, that these are not therapists.
Just a quick clarifying question. Reagan, did you say it's about 48 hours until somebody will get back after you've left a message on the voicemail?
Yeah, that should be like latest. If you haven't heard from us in 48 hours, your call might not have gone through, you know? So, yeah, if your call is sitting there in our inbox in the morning, it's likely that you'll be getting a call by the end of the day. And the times we've seen the biggest backup are, for example, when we had the appliance sale and we had over 100 calls come in a week. So, but we had the capacity to handle that before the sale came, and that was only about a week and a half of time. So
I think one of the things again, I'm going to try to turn this into a question. Looking across the screen, I know many of the names of the people on this call from a professional scope. So like, Kim, I'm going to pick on you since your video's on. I know that she serves kids and families in a way that could be very, very conducive to finding people who might not already be partnered and supported through our flood recovery efforts. So I guess just looking at, you know, again, the screen and asking ourselves, what role and responsibility do we have? I think a lot of conversations I've been a part of is, yeah, we know there's a broad reach of volunteerism and case management right now in the community. We know that there's other organizations and grassroots entities doing amazing work, but where are the people that have not been identified as having needs? And so how should we be seeking our responsibility to respond to all of this? What do you need from community members in a way that can bring more people to this concept of flood recovery supports? That is my question. So figure out how you want to answer that.
I think that that's a great question. And what we've typically been asking so far is really just to refer people to this phone line and watch the process work. And that when we get that buy-in from flood survivors, they tell their friends, they tell their neighbors, they tell the other people that they know have been affected by this. That's how we've seen some of our best outreaches are flood survivors themselves who have benefited from what we've been able to offer them so far. I fear every day that there are people that have fallen through the cracks. The people who knew to apply for FEMA and knew to apply for SBA and knew to call us, probably are not the only people affected by this flooding. So if you know of people who are flood affected and they're still recovering, encourage them to give us a call, because they may not have gotten any of the outreach thus far. I know that Bree mentioned the efforts. They went door to door in the village of Sanford with bags and information. But some people don't even know what to trust and what to believe, because they're getting a wide variety of information. We found a neighborhood in Sanford that all of them are out of wells right now. And we found that out the day of the FEMA deadline. So that allowed for us to tell FEMA about this, and they extended the deadline application for people who have well needs. So there is a lot of power in just any information that you have and being able to share that with us. And I don't know if I have a better answer than that besides giving us a call and letting us know. Any thoughts that you have, Bree or Alicia, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I just want to build on the concept of collaboration. The DCMs are really the backbone to us being effective in the community, but they can only be as effective as we allow that partnership to happen. And so I partner very strongly from a volunteer and in-kind donation perspective and from a United Way perspective. But in order for us to make the biggest impact in the community, I think it's important for all of us as community leaders to know that that partnership with the DCMs is critical. And the more that we can be advocates on the recovery process, both from a long-term recovery group piece and from, the DCM specifically and the construction manager, the more of an impact I think that we're going to be able to make. So advocacy, advocacy, advocacy. And I personally know that the DCMs are excellent partners. They listen incredibly well. They're trained to do that, which means they also listen to me even when I'm stubborn. But I've very much enjoyed my partnership with them. They make partnership really easy. So I encourage everybody on this call to, if you're not already doing that, to continue to do that and enhance that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for that feedback and insight. And I think when I think about the nearly 100 families right now that are actively being served through case management, I just think about, it can be difficult to quantify what that impact is and that ripple effect. But I think what you're talking about is making sure those people are also empowered to then go tell someone else or advocate to someone else, so we can continue to build out that client capacity. And I think I'm looking at the time. I know we're going to start wrapping up here. I think the one other piece that I just want to bring mention to, that it can be tricky when we're working with a best practice process to fully empathize or understand the part that case management has a lot of mandated confidentiality pieces that they have to uphold. And they are currently working with their active caseload to be able to identify those social emotional supports that can come alongside in a very transparent level. But I think again, not really a question for both of you, but something I just wanted to make sure we name on this call, because it can be disempowering to the people in the community who are really promoting this case management and then feeling like, yeah, but then what? I don't know what happens. And so I guess I just want to put that plug in that unfortunately we might not always get to see that outcome because of the piece around confidentiality, but know that if there's a creative way to work with the clients and really identify people that can support, they will do that. But sometimes the answer just simply has to be unfortunately, personal protected information just can't be shared. So just that quick plug. Okay, again, looking at the time, I'm gonna summarize this here. And I just want to say, again, thank you, Bree. Thank you, Reagan. Not really just for coming here this morning, but more in the work that has led you to this point. I know that, again, I mentioned this work is messy. It's imperfect. It's chaotic. Collaboration is not always super fun, but it's so needed and it's so necessary. And so I really appreciate the work you're all doing and the scopes that you are doing it. And I thank everybody else for being on this call as well, because the more community advocates we have to this process, the more we can hope to continue to kind of ripple that impact within our community and our flood recovery process. And before Emily closes us out, I just wanted to again make sure that people 000, please use that. I know I give it out a lot. And then I also want to point people to the portal for United Way that Emily dropped in the chat for volunteer opportunities. And also encourage people to still visit our reliefmidland.org website. That is a housed website within the 211 website system, but ultimately things are kept really up to date. And so there's a clickable volunteer portal that'll travel people right to the United Way portal. And so it's just hopefully helping to build an easeability of connection. So I guess with that being said, Emily, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thanks, Alicia. And yeah, it was a really informative session. And I think, you know, the biggest takeaway just generally is that, yeah, if you know of someone that has questions or wants to know more or has needs and is in the thick of it and doesn't feel comfortable reaching out, like encourage them to, maybe you can call on their behalf, but definitely reach out using that phone number or reaching out to United Way if you have a desire to serve. And you don't have to have construction experience. We need helpers with people just making phone calls too. So I just encourage folks to encourage people to reach out and connect. And I really appreciate everyone joining in on the call today. And I did share the link for the next call, which will be November 12th. So you can register on that link, and then the recording for today's session will also be on that link too at the Midland Foundation site and also on the reliefmidland.org site too. So thank you, Bree and Reagan, for your presentation today and for sharing your time, because we know it's so valuable because of just the mass amounts of work that you guys are doing, and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Good day.